Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we'll be looking into Tropical Storm Francine, and most likely soon to be Hurricane Francine, as well as these other systems back here in the Atlantic Ocean. So this system here in the yellow, its chance of development has been going down, so we're not going to really talk about that one too much. But this system here in the red has an 80% chance to develop into a tropical depression or a named storm in the next 7 days, and then also a 40% chance to do so here in the next 2 days. But let's take a look at Tropical Storm Francine. This is called Zoom Earth. So it shows the map of the National Hurricane Center's track, but it's kind of just like the National Hurricane Center mixed with Google Maps. So right now, Francine is a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm, and it is expected to become a 75-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane around 8 p.m. tonight. And then it is supposed to strengthen into a 90-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane around 8 a.m. on Wednesday. And they had it showing as a Category 2 hurricane upon landfall, but they did decrease that back to a strong Category 1 hurricane, but we will need to watch for that upgrade again, as I could see it happening, and it is pretty likely for that to happen. But it is supposed to make landfall sometime in the afternoon on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. And then it is supposed to weaken down to about a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm in the morning of Thursday, and then head north, and then not really do too much after that. But here is the traditional look from the National Hurricane Center. This area in the orange here shows, or the yellow color, shows tropical storm, the wind field of tropical storm wind speeds. And then, once again, these colors here in the red are hurricane warnings, the colors in the blues are tropical storm warnings, and then the colors here in the yellows are tropical storm watches. But we could see up to 10 feet of storm surge in portions of Louisiana, and that is why we have that moderate risk of flash flooding. And there's also a pretty large amount of rainfall that is supposed to fall as well. But let's take a look at the GFS model. Starting this off around 8 p.m. on September 10th, which is the day I'm recording this video. It's initializing fairly well. It's a 992, it shows it as a 986 millibar storm, and it is a 988. So initializing pretty well, but we will continue this. Shows it strengthened to about a 978 millibar, most likely Category 2 hurricane, or a strong Category 1 hurricane. And then it makes landfall in portions of Louisiana. And the GFS has been a little further east, which is not good, especially for places like Baton Rouge and New Orleans. But it does get into Mississippi, brings a tornado threat to portions of Alabama, maybe even a little bit of Georgia, and then kind of heads on out of here. It doesn't really do too much, just brings some rain to the southeast. But next up is a European model, initializing a little too, it's initializing actually basically on point. And then it does show it weaken a little bit as it moves further north into the Gulf of Mexico. And then it doesn't really do too much. It kind of keeps it about the same, maybe gets it to a low-end Category 1 hurricane, and then makes a landfall, and then brings a tornado threat to Mississippi and Alabama, and then heads on out. But it doesn't really show it strengthen as much. Next up is the Canadian model, initializing a little bit weaker than it is, but we will keep this moving here, and it just makes it have a landfall. It shows it making landfall just as a tropical storm here, and then brings that tornado threat once again to Mississippi and Alabama, but this one's a little further west. But next up is the Icon model, also initializing a little weaker. Shows it strengthen to most likely maybe a low-end Category 2 hurricane, strong Category 1 hurricane around 2 p.m. Tomorrow, and then weakens just a little bit right before landfall, as it could be dealing with some dry air, then makes landfall maintains tropical storm status all the way up possibly into Arkansas, and then brings a tornado threat to areas of Mississippi, Alabama, and possibly even Tennessee and Kentucky. Next up is the H-Worth model. It is initializing a little bit too strong, but that is all right. These tend to initialize a little stronger than it usually is, but we will keep this going. So around 2 a.m. tomorrow, the H-Wharf wants to strengthen it all the way down to a 959 millibar. Most likely that'd be a Category 3, and most likely a strong one at that. So most likely a little bit too strong, but we will have to watch for that possibly. And then shows a pretty nasty northern eye wall, and then possibly a pretty nasty tornado threat in portions of Alabama and Alabama and Florida down here. Kind of hard to see, it is kind of off the screen, but it is there, and then it will eventually head on out. Next up is the HFA model, also initializing a little too strong. But this one strengthens it to a 967 millibar Category 2, borderline Category 3 hurricane, and then weakens a little bit right before landfall. And also shows a pretty nasty northern eye wall. And then you can see that tornado threat here a little bit better on the side of your screen. And yeah, most likely a very significant tornado threat there. If this model does verify when the system actually makes landfall. And sorry for all the stutters and stuff, guys. Not really sure what's causing it. But let's continue and let's look at the tornado risk with this system. So today there's actually a small marginal risk just to the south of New Orleans, and this has a 2% tornado risk with this. And then tomorrow there's a slight risk of severe weather, and that's just going to be for that tornado risk. That includes Mobile, Alabama, New Orleans, and then a little bit of the panhandle of Florida. And then there's a marginal risk surrounding that goes all the way up into about central Mississippi. And there's a 5% tornado risk with this tomorrow. And then last, we have the day 3 severe weather risk. There is a marginal risk that goes all the way to Tallahassee, Florida, and then all the way up into just a tiny little section of Tennessee. And then there's also a marginal risk up in Montana, but we're not really going to speak on that. But this area down here, once again, is going to be a 2% tornado threat. So with that, thank you for watching. One more look at Tropical Storm Francine, soon to be Hurricane Francine. Might already be a hurricane by the time you're watching this video, but it is supposed to make it to hurricane status around 8 p.m. tonight, and then make a landfall maybe around 6 or 5 p.m. tomorrow. So thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one, everybody, and stay safe.